Microphone check. 1, 2. What is this? Welcome, sports fans and family. Breaking news. Wait. I have it here. Breaking news. Donald Trump showed his entire ass to the National Association of Black Journalists, specifically, and Black people in general. Hi, Curious Formula here, your host and moderator for our weekly live. And I want to invite you to come on in, take off your shoes, drink something cold. There's something in the refrigerator for you. Just go grab it and let's wrap, right? But before we start, make sure you subscribe, like, and comment below, and hit the notification bell so we can let you know when we do this regularly, and you get your personal invitation to come back each and every week and join us here for a lively discussion that I hope you'll enjoy and find fruitful. So, we ready? Let's get into our topics today. So, Donald Trump showed his entire ass to the National Association of Black Journalists today and the Black community. So, let's just be honest about this. Donald Trump came to show Black people who was boss. Yeah. And to give his base the MAGA red meat it had been clamoring for, that it was looking for weeks. After weeks of Kamala Harris taking over the airwaves and all the good press, and Donald Trump was hankering to become the subject matter, for bad or for worse, right? Just so he could be that person in the spotlight, because to him, like a lot of people, right, any news is good, right? Whether it's good or bad, he wants it all, and he wants it to be about him. Harris has recently said, Vice President Kamala Harris has recently said that if Donald Trump has a grievance with her, he ought to say it to my face, right? That's hood talk, right? That's how we get down. But he did the next best thing today, because she could not get her invitation together with NABJ, which is a disgrace. But we'll get to that in terms of how they handle that situation. But he didn't say it to her face, but he did the next best thing that he could do, and that's say it right to Black America's face. But Black Trump supporters, I know they're going to use this to say that he went into the belly of the Black liberal base and then the Black liberal beast, and he won, right? He came out unscathed. So there's a couple of positives that I'd like to start off with, because I don't want this to be a complete negative fest, right? At the end of the day, there were some positives, and I took some notes here, so bear with me as I talk about the positives of Donald Trump going to the NABJ convention. One was his willingness to come before the crowd. Listen, if you think it's easy for a Republican, not just a regular Republican, a MAGA Republican, not just a MAGA Republican, Donald Trump himself in the flesh, to come to a convention where most of the journalists, not most, all of the journalists are African-American, Black, Black, right? They could be other, whatever. They're Black people. Probably progressive. Probably liberal. Probably have written negative things about him. All in a room together. And you know how we get, right? We fold our arms, right? We start saying, boy, he ought to be ashamed of himself, right? It ain't easy it ain't easy if you're Black and a liberal coming into a room with all those people, right? And he's Donald Trump. So I got to give him credit for doing that, right? He was funny. There was a joke he made. What was the joke he made? He said that he made a joke about not being able to hear. Apparently the sound was bad on the stage. We could hear it in the audience, and we could hear it. We watched it on CNN. We could hear it, but apparently people on the stage had some issues. Even Harris Faulkner from Fox said, I'm having trouble hearing in my ear. So he made a joke about not being able to hear, and he said, I can't hear Harris or anybody else. I hear Rachel Scott, and oh gosh, I wish I didn't hear her, right? I mean, he was in Rachel Scott's tail all day long, but that was funny, right? I can't hear anybody else on stage, but I hear Rachel Scott, geez, I hear too much. I mean, geez, he looks up, right? He was funny, right? He was funny. What's the other positive I could say? He parried them well. Listen, those questions they asked were some of the most single, inane, hype of the moment questions. There was nothing substantive about it. And When he wanted to drone on, he droned on. They couldn't stop him. They couldn't interrupt him. They couldn't get him off what he wanted to talk about. He was repetitive and all that kind of good stuff, but he controlled the room. And as a former elected official, 2 terms, my last re-election with 83% of the vote, the first thing you learn when you debate is that you make the debate about what you want the debate to be about. And the moderator, if the host can't get you back on topic, that's on them. I'm there to talk about what I want to talk about. And I will frame your question in the way I need to frame it to get out what I want to get out. And Donald Trump did that. They look like amateurs on that stage. So he parried them well. What are some of the negatives? Well, he didn't answer any question with substance, right? This goes back to the 13-0, well, the 0-13 that he did during the Biden debate, right? We talked about that here on this content. Make sure you subscribe, like, and comment below. Make sure you do that. So you can see all my content when I talk about this, all my previous lives, all that kind of good stuff. But we talked about him not actually answering any questions in the Joe Biden debate. And no one talked about it because of the bad performance that Joe Biden, the alias, the Crypt Keeper, gave us live and direct. But Donald Trump did not answer any question. We did a live on my TikTok page during the debate. We had a lot of Trump supporters because we want everybody to look at this content. Trump supporters, Biden supporters, RFK Jr. supporters, you name it, whoever you support, come on and join us here because we're going to talk real stuff that hopefully you'll learn from, and we won't troll you. We don't care where you stand. We just want to have an honest discussion, debate on reality and not just bumper sticker stuff. So we had a lot of Republicans, a lot of Trumpers in there, and they were saying, he's not, I'm saying he's not answering the questions. They were like, yes, he is. And so we actually would wait for the question to be asked, and Donald Trump wouldn't answer the question. I'd say he didn't answer that question. He literally went we counted. He went 13 questions straight. How would you hold up Social Security? How would you fix it? How would you deal with the environment? How would you do? He didn't answer anything. He just went on the attack on Joe Biden. Again, he controlled the debate and said what he wanted to say. And so he did that again on this stage, which was not good. This was an opportunity for Donald Trump to come before not just the journalists in the room, but Black America, the Black community in general, and kind of state where he stood on issues, kind of give us his vision, kind of give us a hopeful sort of big tent thing that would say, this is why Black people, this is why African Americans, this is why ADOS, whatever you consider yourself, should consider voting for me. And he just didn't do that, right? The other thing he did was that was negative. He insulted the journalists on stage and Black journalism in general. Basically anything Black that did not support him, he just attacked. I mean, he ran up and down Rachel Scott. He totally did not answer the questions. Even that Harris Faulkner asked him from Fox, he kind of meandered and went into what he wanted to do. I'm the best president for Black people since Lincoln. Is Kamala Black? I mean, just really, really just insulting. I mean, to the point of like, that was why he was there, was to insult Black journalists. It appeared that way. And then he made, the last negative thing is he made this into his Sister Soldier moment. Now, for those of you who are too young to remember the Sister Soldier moment, let me recap for you, because Donald Trump definitely used this as his Sister Soldier moment. So Donald Trump, in coming to the NABJ, really is the latest person in a long line of politicians who use Black conferences to show white people how tough they are concerning Black people. I can't really phrase it any other kind of way. Of coming into a Black conference or a Black community or a Black event and doing something that is controversial or at odds with the Black mainstream, which tends to be more liberal, tends to be more progressive, right? Tends to be more in the vein of liberation than maybe other ethnic groups in America. So an example of this is not even a Republican. It's not even Donald Trump. It's not even a Republican that you would have thought, like Ronald Reagan or Dick Nixon or someone like that. No. This was Bill Clinton in 1992 at the National Action Network conference in New York City. Or it might have even been in LA. But in June of 1992, Bill Clinton, then candidate Bill Clinton, governor, state of Arkansas, running for president, was trying to showcase how he was not a traditional Democrat, that he was something different, right? That he was a moderate Democrat. He was a pragmatist Democrat, that he didn't adhere to the old coalition of Black and Latinos and liberalism. He was a moderate. He was a more of a more conservative than he was liberal, right? Even though he would not probably consider himself that. But he wanted to show that he was not beholden to the Black community in the traditional way that most politicians in the Democratic side were beholden to Black interests at that time. And so he spoke at that conference, and he criticized the comments of Sister Soldier. If you know who Sister Soldier is, she's an award-winning author of books, an extremely brilliant intellectual, soldier for the cause of Black empowerment and pride. And in the 90s, she was it for us, right? We were people who just followed her because she was so real, she was authentic, she was powerful, and she made a lot of sense. And she was educated. She's a Rutgers University educated. Shout out to New Jersey, and just a brilliant person to be on stage that could parry and go to fisticuffs with any person, particularly on the right. She was on Donahue's show. Just Google her. Not only her wit, but her political commentary. And she had made a statement about the LA riots that had just happened. And Bill Clinton said, if you substituted the word black for white in her speech, it could be David Duke giving the same speech. And there's no place in America to tolerate racism from anybody, from Black people, from white people. Now, he picked that spot. He picked that convention right in front of Al Sharpton to make that statement with her right there to show the electorate, the broader electorate, right, that he was different, that he was not your age-old, he's not your mama's and your uncles and your daddy's Democratic Party. This is a new centrist Democratic Party. And if you know anything about Bill Clinton, that was his politics in the early 90s, because that's when the saying was that the Democrats need to be more like Republicans to win national elections. And we all know that that was sort of his thing. So while Bill Clinton used that moment, and it's called the Sister Soldier moment, like literally Bill Clinton invented that moment. But while Bill Clinton used it to appeal to a broader electorate outside the Democratic Party and outside of the traditional Democratic base, Donald Trump used this to appeal to his particular base. And let's not let off the national the NABJ in any of this, because they look like a bunch of clowns. First, they wouldn't change their important schedule and itinerary to allow Vice President Kamala Harris to come and speak, who was obviously in Texas attending the funeral, as most of the elected official class is for Sheila Jackson Lee's funeral and the ceremonies around that. Rest in peace to Sheila Jackson Lee. Worked with her office for a long time, and wouldn't do that, but allowed not only Donald Trump to speak, but allowed him to pick one of the moderators, as I mentioned, Harris Faulkner from Fox, to be on the stage, and was only there for a short amount of time. They asked bad questions. The sound was bad. I already talked about that on the stage. A lot of them, Rachel Scott, love you on ABC. I think you're an incredible journalist, but they came off as like angry women trying to trap him. And that's what Donald Trump said to her. Like, I've never been asked a question like that before. Like, you're a mean woman. Again, the trope of the angry Black woman, he put it out there. And NABJ allowed it to happen. NABJ is guilty of platforming surreal ridiculousness and failing to hold it accountable. I'm going to say that again. The NABJ platform surreal ridiculousness and then failed to hold it accountable. I ain't got to say nothing else more about that, except to say this. These are dire times. And if Black organizations of journalists who are supposed to know better, who are supposed to present facts, if you are going to invite someone who's running for president, invite everybody, invite at least the two major parties to do that, and then ask questions that are important to the everyday lives of Black people, to our economic interests, to our civil rights interests, to our law enforcement and criminal justice issues. Talk to us about education. Talk to us about healthcare. Talk to us about urban development. Talk to us about job creation. Talk to us about the things that are important to our communities, not what J.D. Vance happened to say about women who don't have children. The NABJ just parroted the same nonsense that goes on as on the 24-hour cable news network that doesn't serve anybody and signifies nothing. Thanks for doing us a favor, and thanks for getting what you got from that interview, because now he has bragging rights to talk about our community even more and in worst possible terms. On to our second topic. Let's shake it off. I'm shaking it off. Okay. The Olympics opening ceremony mocked God and Christians, folks. So we all have been talking about this, right? So during the parade down the River Seine, I never pronounced that right, Seine, River Seine. I took German. I didn't take French, sorry, in school. Several scenes were posted, right? We had heavy metal band that played, rock on out. I was all there for that, right? The fire coming out of the windows and the the head banging. I'm all for that. Shout out to all the heavy metal headbangers out there. A fashion runway, right? You can't be in France, can't be in Paris and not talk about fashion. And some of those fashions are off the hook, but where's Paris, right? And when in Paris, do what the Parisians do. There was dancers dancing on a pogo stick, right? Somewhere downtown by the Eiffel Tower. I don't know where they're bouncing around, right? It was fun stuff. Oh yeah. And then there was a scene around the table that looked a lot like Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper. There was something different about it, though. Yeah, but it was with drag queens. Just think about that for a minute. Yeah. Now the creator and the show producer have said that it was a homage, an homage. I'm trying to get my French in. An homage to the Greek god Dionysus, right? The god of wine and revelry, right? That was a big fat blue guy who was painted blue with a big stomach, right? But if you look at a picture of that plateau and you look at a picture of the actual Last Supper painting, it's pretty obvious that they were two. The person in the middle was someone dressed in drag with a blue drag, and they had like a little thing on their head that looked almost like a flame. It was definitely giving Christ-like symbolism, if nothing else and nothing less. And let me just say this as a Christian, a few thoughts here, and I'm going to be frank and honest here. First of all, as I said, it was mocking the Last Supper, and it happens way too much. And you don't have to be a Christian. I'm not telling you. You can be agnostic. You could be atheist. I'm just trying to say, take a walk in my shoes as a Christian for just a minute here. Remember, there was a proclivity in the culture to ridicule anyone who is a Christian, to ridicule chastity, to ridicule people having a faith, to ridicule clean living, to ridicule that which is not hedonistic, YOLO, that is not about get yours, grab the bag, girl, you ain't got to settle for that, making mockery of disciplined living, of people who plan out their lives and live fastidiously and live frugally and live in a very controlled and organized way. That's not always just about self-pleasure and just having fun, particularly if you're young, right? And so I think about the example, not just of this, but I think about the example of quarterback CJ Stroud, new quarterback, young quarterback, Houston Texans, had a great year this past year. And when they're in the playoffs, he gets interviewed, and he is a staunch young Christian who basically said, I promised God that if I made it to the NFL, I would always give his name the praise. And I don't care who says it. I don't care who's around. I'm going to do that. And in every interview you see him in, particularly during the playoffs, particularly when he has done something incredible and he gets the opportunity, he always says, I just want to thank God. Sit down and thank God for all that he's given me, all that he's done for me. I would not be here if it had not been for the grace and the love of Jesus Christ. And every interview he does that in, when you replay the video online, that part of the interview is always cut. And he's not the only one. There are other athletes, there are other celebrities who, when they give the praise, they're cut. That's one example. The other example is, have you noticed for the mocking that happens with Christians, you don't see similar mocking of Muslims? There seems to be a proclivity in the culture and in our world that says being a Muslim or having an alternative sort of viewpoint or religious feeling, like, you know, being into crystals or being into some higher level of, you know, transcendental meditation or some new religion that, you know, embraces sort of all things and all people, mysticism and that kind of thing. That is actually given more shrift and more cries and pleas to be accepting of than being a Christian. And I use Muslims because the culture, again, will say the Muslim faith is a strong faith. They will point to Muslims. People, you know, incorrectly, and I think with prejudice, say, well, you know, being a Muslim means that you're like into jihad and you're into kill. It's a religion of violence and whatnot. You will have even non-Christians. You will have even atheists and agnostics and people who don't believe in anything say that's wrong. We should not be doing that and talking about Muslims in that way. And that's ethnocentric. That's religious bigotry at the highest level. You don't get similar things happening with Christians. And I think it's because in America, we've had freedom of religion so long, and you can go to and from places, either practice a religion or not practice a religion. And it doesn't stop you from getting jobs. It doesn't mean you're persecuted. If you're a Christian, you can live your life here. If you're not a Christian, you can live your life here. The founders were deeply flawed people, but they were right in trying to make sure that separation of church and state, and that's not exactly the term, but you get what I mean, that was important, that your religious life was personal, that it was important, that it was vital. But if you didn't have that, then you are just as good of an American as a person who is. And shout out to JD Vance, who doesn't believe that. But the mocking of Christians really has gotten to a level where Christians are now have their backup. They're now saying we're not going to sit back and allow these kinds of slights to continue on us. That our position and our thoughts, while we don't have to impose them on you, have validity, are not ridiculous, and our way of life and how we choose to lose our life, to live our lives. And so if the Muslim can be given the space to practice and we can look at and support the principles that are beautiful and that we identify with there. And if we could do the same thing with New Age religions and mysticism and cool things that, you know, don't really have as strict of a dogma or as strict of a rule, a strict of a rule lifestyle as Christianity may have, that like we still should be allowed to have our say in the public square and not be censored. And don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about the Fox News thing about, you know, Christmas is against the law now. We can't even say Merry Christmas anymore. We can't even acknowledge the nativity scene on the lawn of the town hall. No, I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is as quick as we are to say the Muslim faith should be protected and the best parts of it should be heralded and not censored, and the best of all the religions, so should the Christian faith. Because there are still a lot of us out here. There's still whole communities of us out here living and doing good work in our community, and we should not be demonized or dismissed or insulted in the public square because of our faith. Now, I'm not crying victim here. I'm not going wham, 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 poor Christians. But I do recognize, as I started to say, that in America, we're very nonchalant about it because we have a free practice of it, or you can choose not to practice it. If you go around the world in places like China and parts of Africa and other places, people are thrown to prison and killed and harmed because they have a Bible. The practice of organized Christianity in some Muslim countries is the sentence is death if you're caught. Or in places that are Buddhist, that are, again, peace-loving religions, but if you're a Christian, you could be persecuted for it. I listened to Candace Owens talk on a Don Lemon interview she gave, and while I don't agree with a lot about what Candace Owens says, she did say something that I did agree with, and Don Lemon sort of poo-poo. And Don Lemon says that he's a Christian, but he laughed at the idea that Christians are persecuted around the world. And Candace Owens was like, you don't know that? You don't recognize that? And I didn't get as mad as she did, but I understood that Don Lemon is an American through and through. He lives here. He was born and raised here. He gets to practice Christianity the way that he wants to practice it, whether it's at odds with other Christians or not. And that sense of freedom, that sense, it really creates a sense of entitlement, a sense of how I think is okay and is the right way, or it doesn't matter, right? And this opens the door then to have other interpretations or other types of Christianity that doesn't fit the culture's idea of what Christianity should be and can be and must be. That must be canceled. That must be put aside. That must be seen as heretical or something that's not Christian-like. And I just have a problem with when the culture is trying to tell Christians what Christianity is. And it's interesting that in this Olympics opening ceremony, for them to say, the show producer and the creator to say, no, this is not the Last Supper, when it's obvious it is. And I hear more people taking their word for it than taking the word of Christians who were offended by it, yours truly included, to be really puzzling and really sad. I'll end this with this. I respect all religions. I don't believe in all religions, but I respect all religions. And if someone's a Muslim and wants to give praise to Allah for their life on national TV, I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with the Buddhists or the Hindi expressing their faith and how their faith maybe led them to be successful in life or conquer demons or conquer alcoholism or made them a better husband or a better wife, better father, better mentor, better businessman or woman. Got no problem with that. The problem, though, is that people have that issue with Christians. That if a Christian like, say, C.J. Stroud or other celebrities will say, I thank God that I'm living, that I've been able to achieve the success in life, that through him, I realized my power. I realized my potential. I realized I could be anything I want to be. And he gave me the power and the focus and the discipline to get to where to get to where I am right now. And I could not have done that without him. That is somehow bad. That is somehow not good or not something that should be celebrated. At the very least, it should at least be reported for what it is. That C.J. Stroud and others did say this, and it's how they feel. And so it makes Christians, in conclusion, feel like when someone says that about Christianity and Christ, that's the only reason there's a problem with people saying that. That if somebody has said, I read a book and the book gave me inspiration and made me do this with my life, or if I read an essay and that made me do this with my life, if I joined this group and that's what changed my life, we wouldn't have a problem with it. But we only have a problem with it when somebody says it and Jesus Christ is the center of that discussion and that argument and that position. That's the way I see it. Okay. Let me get off my soapbox. Let's talk a little something else here. So, topic number 3, moving our way through. Kamala Harris is taking off, y'all. Taking off. I know what you Republicans are going to say. I know what you Trump guys are going to say. You're going to say, it's the Harris honeymoon. This ain't going to last. This is the bump. This is the bump. Be that as it may. So there's a new Bloomberg News / Morning Consult poll out today, that shows that Vice President Kamala Harris has erased President Trump's lead in 7 key battleground states after just 1 week of becoming the presumptive nominee. 48 to 47% across all the battleground states. Folks, that is big. And that's with the biggest bump coming in Michigan, where she has an 11-point lead. She's leading by 2 percentage points in Nevada, 2 percentage points in Arizona, 2 percentage points in Wisconsin. And folks who are Trump supporters who may be watching my content, don't worry, we're not going to leave you out. Donald Trump is still leading by 4 in Pennsylvania and North Carolina, and both are tied in Georgia. Yeah. So here's a few thoughts that I have. If you follow my content, you know I've been mainly doing this on other platforms, talking nightly and leaving daily updates as this race has really moved into crazy person land in terms of, being precedent setting, and we've never been in this position before. And so this is all really exciting stuff for me. It should be exciting stuff for you. But let me just handicap this a little bit. So we were doing some content about this, and then Joe Biden drops out and the sky falls, and now every day we are in new territory. With less than 100 days to an election, we have a new candidate who is the presumptive nominee of the Democratic Party, who is going to pick a VP candidate to run with her by August 7th by law, and then it's off to the races. The way these things normally happen in presidential races and contests are that, the month of August, July, but definitely August, it's like the sleepy month. Members of Congress are back home. Congress is not in session in the month of August. As a lobbyist here in Washington, D.C., I'm kind of thankful I can catch up on work and do timesheets and all that kind of good stuff, right? Go on vacation, get some sleep. Well, not a lot of sleep. I've got kids. But I digress. But it's a sleepy month. And it's all in prep for after Labor Day, when there's a sprint. September, October to November, it's a sprint with people cross-country visiting and whatnot. Well, that honeymoon phase is over with, folks. We're in the middle of the heat of the fight right now as we speak. And that's why every day now people's attention are wrapped and paying attention to this race before not even in August yet. Before August even, we're all looking at the news. We all have opinions. There's all kinds of negative things out there in terms of commercials and space and that kind of stuff. But let me tell you some of the things that I think, first of all, about polls in general. You follow my content, I know you're going to hear this again from me. So what? Just be quiet, sit in the back, go back to the fridge. I got some more cold stuff in there. Got some more beer, some more soda, some more water, Yeah. But what do I say about polls all the time? That polls are not determinative. Let me say that again for the cheap seats. Polls are not determinative. What does that mean? It means that polls are snapshots in time. It means that they are important, yes, to the overall formula and a bunch of other things you need to look at, but they're snapshots in time to give you a real idea about where the race is right now. And polls are snapshot in time. Today we'll say one thing, we'll show another thing the next day. The goal is to look at trends to see what polling is going from today over the next couple of days, over the next couple of weeks. It's about looking at subgroups and demographic out and seeing like who's moving, who's not moving, why are they moving, what you look at that. So polls are important and are good if you look at them in context with about 6 or 7 other indices to give you a state of the race. And as I've told you all before, if you follow my content, Donald Trump and Joe Biden were in their low to mid 40s with very little movement going up to 50% for either candidate. Why? Because most people in America didn't want either one of them. They didn't want Joe Biden. They didn't want Donald Trump. And I keep telling Donald Trump supporters, you all like, yeah, Joe Biden's out the way. We're going to win this election, man. You're popping your collars, right? You're popping your champagne. We're going to win this in a walk, right? Wrong. The polls said they didn't want Joe Biden or Donald Trump. Well, Joe Biden's out of this race, folks. The only person in America has said in polling they don't want to be president is Donald Trump. And so Donald Trump, quiet is kept. I guarantee this is actually happening as a former elected official who's been part of working on campaigns since the age of 12. They're panicking over there. That's why you see the attacks all over the place. That's why you see a lot of this, she's liberal. And then some people are saying, well, she's this, she's that. Right? She's the worst vice president ever. It's called raising the flag. It's to see who salutes. It's called throwing stuff against the wall to see what sticks. They don't know how to attack her. They had planned their entire campaign for the fall on a faltering crypt keeper, old man with a raspy voice who didn't know where to go off the stage if Jill didn't lead him by the hand, right? So this is a young, vibrant prosecutor who knows how to debate on her feet, who looks good in front of the camera, who has energy, who has quips, who can make comebacks, who can lead you back to your meandering points when you go off those points. That's who Kamala Harris is, whether you like her or not. That's who she is. And in Trump land, these numbers should make them very nervous. This 11-point lead in Michigan, first of all, I don't believe that lead is that big because it was a Trump lead, and have her then take the lead by 11 is a little suspicious weekend. But what we thought was going to be a problem states, and what we thought were going to be problem states and battleground states have now kind of morphed into states that are back to where Biden was leading like in 2020. And that gets me to my point. We have talked about in my content here that both candidates, Democrat, Republican Party, I can't say Biden and Trump anymore, but both candidates in each party each has a mountain to climb in order to win the election in November. Throw out what MSNBC is telling you. Throw out what Fox Entertainment is telling you. Throw out what Newsmax and News Nation and CNN are telling you, right? The 24-hour cable news network, they're here to keep you just glued. They're here to keep you like this is a dog race, horse race, whatever you want to call it, till, 8 o'clock on election day in November. They're never, even if somebody was up by 8-9 points, they would still try to find ways to say that's not real and this person can still win. And they do that, right? It's to keep you on the edge of your seats and you like, I don't know what's going to happen, right? That's kind of what they do. So it comes down to two things, and we've said this before. Donald Trump has to win the election in November. Donald Trump, the mountain he must climb is he must win independence nationwide. It's how he beat Hillary Clinton in a very close race. He was able to win because why? He won independence. And now the reason why it's a mountain for him to climb is because Donald Trump and Republicans have not won independence since 2016. So when you look at the midterms in 2018, did Republicans win or lose? They lost. Why? They didn't win independence. When you look at 2020, Donald Trump's re-election campaign, he didn't lose because of election fraud. Why did he lose? Say it with me, choir. He did not win independence. In 2022, remember the big red powerful wave that was going to come into Congress that never materialized? Why did it not materialize? And I need the choir, and I need, hey, Rachel, how you doing? I need the choir, and I need the deacons and the trustees. I need some of those nurses in the back to stand all up in the church and say it with me. Why didn't the red wave of 22 happen in Congress? Because Republicans did not win independence. They didn't win independence. And so all year long, Donald Trump had been what? Falling behind Joe Biden with independence. Some polling has showed that he is up with independence nationwide. A week ago, I saw a poll that said he was at 49 or 46 to 43%. But I wonder what those numbers look like now. Again, we need to take a look at those numbers and break them apart to see how independents are voting in these polls. But what's interesting to me is that it's tight. And if Donald Trump can win independence, he has an excellent chance to win the presidency. Now, the Democrats and Joe Biden now, Kamala Harris's mountain they had to climb to win in November that nobody's telling you about is they have to get turnout at the same level of 2020. Joe Biden wins, beats Donald Trump by the hair of his chinny chin, high turnout rates. That's how he wins. Really high numbers The most numbers of people to vote for a presidential candidate in the history of America voted for Joe Biden. And the second person to get the most votes was Donald Trump in 2020. So turnout is the difference maker for Democrats. And all through this year, in the same way that Donald Trump was not showing any ability to get independence, to win independence, Joe Biden had not shown any ability to get the kind of turnout in 2020 and 2024 that he got in 2020. That you heard about the enthusiasm lag, right, with Democrats, particularly with young people and others. So if Kamala Harris and her running mate do not get the same type of turnout in 2024 that they got in 2020, they don't win in November either. And it remains to be seen if either one of them can actually do this, simply because the polling was so bad for either candidate. It's the only way they can absolutely win. And that's why you've not seen much movement to 50% for either candidate, because they have not shown yet the ability to climb over these particular mountains. Some of my other thoughts, this Harris honeymoon stuff that the Republicans are talking about. There's some truth to that. There is. There's some actual truth to there's being a honeymoon period for Harris. And why do I say that? Because she's getting a bump just because she's new, just because she's not Joe Biden. I told you the enthusiasm gap was really there for Democrats. Now everyone's energized. The base is coming out even stronger. Her numbers, even among Democratic voters, are now higher than Joe Biden's, and that's part of her rise. It remains to be seen whether this is a honeymoon or this is a righting of the ship, because her numbers are starting to look a lot like they looked in 2020. Talking about that turnout gap, she's starting to maybe close it. And if the enthusiasm keeps growing, turnout comes out the way it's starting to get better and develop in the way that the Democratic Party looks like, she has a greater ability to grow to 50%. That's my third thought, is nobody's at 50% right now. But I think that, well, I'll tell you what I think later, but nobody's at 50% right now. And I think the polls show that everybody is still around 45, 46, 47%. A mad rush to get to 40, to get to 50%. For those same reasons I talked about, Republicans and Trump need independence. Democrats and Kamala Harris need to get turnout. That's going to decide who gets to 50%. Some other thoughts. Harris needs to move to the middle. I know I've said this before if you watch my content, but it's true. Middle America is looking for someone to represent them. They don't think either party does. They don't want MAGA. Polling has showed that. Anecdotal people will tell you that. Now, I know that the folks who support Donald Trump don't like to hear that. They think like, no, everybody does. Everybody I talk to does. No, most Americans, the silent majority that Richard Nixon used to talk about, the ones who don't respond to polls, the ones who don't talk about politics in open, they don't want Donald Trump. They will sit at home, and some of them will reluctantly vote for him if they don't think there's somebody else on the other side. But they want somebody in the middle. They want somebody who's moderate. They want somebody who's inclusive. They want somebody that doesn't take far right or far left opinions about issues and about matters. And so if Kamala Harris wants to get to 50% and keep the enthusiasm gap strong, but go after those independents and deprive Donald Trump of them, and again, deprive him of his election win, and there is a 15%, what I call Ronald Reagan, mainstream conservative folks out there who don't want to vote for Donald Trump either. Why do I call it 15%? Ronald Reagan, mainstream conservative Republicans, because that's the 15% that was voting against Donald Trump in the primaries that we just left, even though he was the presumptive nominee. Nikki Haley got 15% of the Republican primary vote in Indiana, like 3 weeks before the primary season ended. Her name was on the ballot. She wasn't even running. She got 15% in the Maryland Republican primary. Name on the ballot, not even running. A combination of Vivek Ramaswamy, Chris Christie, and Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, and probably Ron DeSantis, she got about that collection got about 13, 14, 17% of the vote against Donald Trump. So there is that group to reach out to and to get if she moves to the middle. And I talked about a number of issues that I won't bore you with here, but another issues that she could do that and not lose her base. Education reform, staking out a new international position in the world, being with our allies, strengthening NATO, all those kinds of things. Talking about infrastructure, talking about environmental issues around the world, staking out, like I said, a new diplomacy. There are a number of issues that she could talk about, even the idea of freedom that she talks about. When she talks about family values and she talks about, what a family actually means. She could actually take that away from the Republicans by talking about how she's holistically looking at the family, from having the right of the government not to be in your bedroom or into your decision making about what you do with your body, or supporting IVF, or supporting childcare, supporting paternal and maternal leave, supporting adoption, supporting all types of families getting involved in fostering kids, and encouraging LGBTQIA plus families to adopt children and to bring love, and all wrap it around with, we need to not only have love in our hearts and a faith that's abiding to make families work and strong. Government has a role to play to make families strong, and that's freedom. The best use of freedom is to use your own personal and family decision making to do what's best for your family, and to have government support you with programs and the dollars to make that actually happen. Last thing I'll say is that Trump is still the favorite, in my opinion, but Kamala Harris still has more room to grow. I mentioned that she can still reach out to independents. She can still solidify her base in the Democratic Party more, and she can go after that 15% of Ronald Reagan Republicans that are mainstream and conservative that are looking for a home and just haven't found it yet. If she can consolidate that, she has a bigger pathway, a bigger room to grow to 50% than Donald Trump, who has used every opportunity, including the day at the NABJ convention, to double down and to support his base and his base alone. And the MAGA base by itself is not enough to win a general election. The last thing I'll say is both of them need to be careful pandering. Kamala Harris, I know you need to increase the base support from African Americans. And having a great rally in Atlanta is great. But having people like Quavo and Megan Thee Stallion with the lyrics and the kind of personal figure that they have out there is no better than Amber Rose coming to the RNC. Now, I said it. You can think what you want to think, but I said it and I stand on it. If we can make fun of Republicans for having Hulk Hogan on there with all the racism that he's been accused of late in his life, or Kid Rock, right, and all the race sort of switching and coding he's done all his life, coming from a rich family and pretending to be in the hood and then becoming like a country star and all to try to save his, his fame. We can make fun of those kind of people. And in years past, it was Clint Eastwood and all those kind of folks. Then, folks, we can't be carting out, Megan Thee Stallion, Quavo. We all made fun of Joe Biden giving an interview to Cardi B. And I'm going to talk about sort of rappers and famous people supporting candidates. But if we're going to get serious here, if we're going to really try to get average Americans who are turned off from the system, I know you think celebrity is the way to do it. It's not. It's talking real issues. And it's okay to have some star power, but we got to be careful that we're not pandering. All right. So last thing we're going to talk about, the Black manosphere and low-rent rappers have made a deal with MAGA. Yes, folks. Those of you know, I listen and look at a lot of content here. And yes, my disclaimer is there are a lot of folks on the Black manosphere, or what people call Black manosphere, that I listen to. Some of them have some really good points about family and about men and about women and relationships and being realistic about choices and kind of going back to traditional ways and values about doing certain things that I can relate to. And I listen to a bunch of folks. Some of them are extremely controversial. People that you would talk to at the family table and you all would be talking for hours upon hours about, that guy's crazy or she's nuts. But it at least spark real conversation. And that's why I listen to them, because they bring a different perspective than I'm used to, and a perspective that I think we all should debate, discuss. My wife hates it, but I respect a lot of these particular content creators and where they stand on things. So who am I talking about specifically? Anton Daniels, O'Shea Duke Jackson. If you don't watch the Celebrity Junk, you should. They're hilarious. Melanie King, who's a woman who's kind of part of the manosphere. And some of these people don't consider themselves part of the manosphere, but I certainly do. MTR and the Poor Man's Podcast, all good content that I think you should listen to. And if you don't like certain parts of it, that's cool too. I think they do have something to say. But all of them have recently made videos that have been extremely critical of Democrats and extremely not only critical but insultingly critical of Kamala Harris. And while everybody can have their own opinions, their criticism is just really warmed over MAGA tropes and talking points. Now, I don't know if they've all been contacted directly by the Trump campaign and are getting a little bit of Skrilla to be the mouthpieces of the right in many ways, which is all I can really say that this is. But their tropes and the things that they say are just rhetorical talking points. They're not based in fact. They're not based in data, not based in research, not even based on government indices and reports or think tanks that actually are not wedded to the right. Now, I don't necessarily believe think tanks that are wedded to the left. I try to find third-party sources, primary sources, non-partisan sources to get my data, my research from. And a lot of their criticisms are just kind of warmed over MAGA tropes in the sense that they are just things that Donald Trump would say rhetorically, but never gives any background for. So here's some of the things that I think are that come out the most that I've written down. I hear a lot of this. Black people are on the Democratic plantation, and what have we gotten for it? Okay. Democrats don't do anything for just black people. They're always doing stuff for everybody else, and black people just it kind of helps black people, but we're not the sole beneficiaries of government policy or government legislative change. And what has Biden Harris done for us anyway? They ain't done nothing for black people. Now, I hear all that stuff, and I think, okay, that's interesting. I'm going to answer all those in a minute here, but no, I'm going to answer them right now. So whenever I hear from black commentators that black people are on the Democratic plantation and what have we ever gotten for it, I always tell people you need to step back and actually examine that for what it is. Now, as a Democrat, disclaimer, who believes that there's a lot the Democratic Party needs to do, right? That they haven't done, that they haven't come through on. There's a lot of deal making going on our backs. There's a lot of promises that have been made and never seen through. I will give you that. But I'm going to flip this on this side. And if we're in bizarro world, let's ask the same question about Republicans. Now, rural, Southern, low-income whites in the South, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, have been voting Republican for longer than Democrats, or about the same time as Democrats. Black people have been voting for Democrats. And what do they have to show for it? Southern white voters, rural voters, get more SSI per capita than anybody in any urban town or city, New York City or Chicago or Newark or St. Louis. They get more federal dollars to pay for education, drug rehab with the opioid crisis that's happening in Appalachia that you can actually read about in J.D. Vance's book, Hillbilly Elegy, which I actually recommend that you take a look at. When you look at the state of education, the state of healthcare, the state of even roads and bridges, the state of job creation, the state of generational poverty, and the ability to have the jobs and skills training and education to get out of that abject poverty over generations, then it's patently clear that you get a worse deal as a rural working class white person in the South from Republicans than anybody black does from Democrats in the North or in urban communities. And that's just fact. And that's not fact for me. You can look at any indice. You can look at any measurement and see that and witness that. To that question about Dems don't do anything for just black people, guess what? Republicans don't just do anything for white people or just don't do anything for black people either. I remember they talked about, well, they had the Democrats gave the Asians the Asian hate crime bill. If you ever read the bill, it's a reaffirmation of the civil rights bill and some of those protections in terms of hate crimes that already on the books. They just made sure that Asian folks were included expressly in a lot of the laws governing sort of the severity of the punishment that goes along with committing these particular crimes, rising them to the level of African Americans in many instances, and Latinos and other groups that are protected classes. It just really raised Asian folks to a protected class that they had heretofore not belonged to. So they called it Asian crime bill, hate bill, because at that particular time, particularly due to COVID, Asians were getting sort of singled out selectively and being abused. And so it just brought them into a protected class that Black people already had. So the reason why there's no Black crime hate bill is because, first of all, it already passed. It's already on the books. There's also a Latino one as well, and some other protected class group. There's a women's one, right? Violence Against Women's Act, right? So it's a dumb thing to say because no party is ever going to do anything for one race of people. And if anybody here knows about Republicans doing that, please put out the legislation. Don't just put it out in rhetoric. What's the legislation that Republicans did just for Black people or for any people of color, ethnically and otherwise? And then what has Biden Harris done anyway? Folks, if you listen to my content, I can give you a laundry list of things. But that's not the point, because I can give you a list of things that Donald Trump has done that actually has been good. May not be everything that I want it to be, but we can talk about Donald Trump and the First Step Act. That's something he should get credit for. We can talk about Donald Trump and the opportunity zones. He should get credit for that. He gets credit for taking over a hot economy from Obama and making it hotter. We can give him credit for that too. We can give him a credit for speed warping the creation of the vaccine and saving millions of lives. You got to give him credit for that. But to act like Biden and Harris haven't done anything when they passed the infrastructure bill that Donald Trump said he would pass and didn't pass, then that 40,000 projects that are currently being worked on right now, that he passed the CHIPS Act, which is actually allowing us to manufacture chips and take our role in the economy that China had a monopoly over. Now, we always laugh and say that the USA doesn't make anything. We make chips now. And that's going to be a corner market that's going to create all kinds of new industry opportunities for our people. And those jobs can't be outsourced. There'll be American jobs that are right here. We could talk about Black unemployment wasn't the lowest under Donald Trump. It was the lowest under Joe Biden. It's the way it is right now, Black unemployment. Creation of more jobs than any other president. I mean, I could go on and on and on. But we got to stop acting like because you don't like somebody that you can just zero sum them and say they haven't done anything. It's ridiculous. It makes no sense. No, I don't like when people do it to Donald Trump, and you doggone sure can't do it to Biden Harris when they have passed more legislation than any president and administration in the last 50 years. It may be legislation you don't like, but it's still been passed and it's still been done. So miss me with that ignorance about Biden hasn't done anything. You could just Google that if you needed to and come up with some answers for that. But then the worst part about it, they're not just joined by content creators like themselves. They're being joined by low rent rappers. They've joined the Matrix as well, supporting Trump. Who are some of these low rent rappers that you won't know about 2 years from now? Sexy Red, Kodak Black. Well, you might hear Kodak Black later. Lil Pump. Lil Wayne, who's at the end of his career, let's be frank. Waka Flocka, who began and ended, except for reality TV shows. Azalea Banks and Chief Keef, who actually took a picture of him supporting Donald Trump with some liquor in one hand and some medicine down here. Yeah, some illegal substance so he can get nice and lifted with some syrup, okay? These are the people who are joining the Black content creators. And why it's funny, and I'll wrap it up with this. The reason why it's funny about how the Black manosphere and these low-rent rappers have made a deal with MAGA to be supportive of MAGA is that the Black manosphere actually calls out these same rappers about everything else they do. They call everything they do stupid, and they're a bad influence on the Black community. They're anti-Black, right? They're the worst, lowest common denominator. They're why these women, these men, these young men and women are being poisoned by their image and by their lifestyle. And it's right. So it's funny that y'all all agree on who should be president. So I guess they're not completely stupid and brain dead and dumb when it comes to who president is, right? Because you agree with them. So either you're brain dead and crazy and they're not, but miss me with that. Last thing I'll say is that none of these rappers, all these black content creators know anything, and I mean anything about government, about history, about politics or policy or what Trump's record actually is. And if they do, my platform is open for you to have a discussion and a debate any day of the week and twice on Sunday, because I can beat you guys with one hand tied behind my back without even trying, without even breaking a sweat, because what you know is minuscule, it's rudimentary, it's basic, and your content is harming America because you're selling one side of this discussion that's not based on anything except your feelings. And if you know your content, you know you say so on your own content that feelings ain't worth a darn. It's what you can prove, it's what you can show, it's what data and research and statistics show, and you all have none of it. So miss me, miss this election, go back to what you actually know and the content that we all like and that you're actually expert in, and stay there. It's more comfortable. And I don't have to come for you guys, but I'm willing and able to. Just meet me here on this battleground, on this platform. That's all I got to say, folks. Make sure you subscribe, like, and comment below. If you like anything we've said tonight, we need you. We need your love. We need your support. We need your vibes. We need your energy here. Even if you couldn't watch this live, make sure you come back and look at it. It'll be on the platform so you can view. We're going to be doing this once a week. I need you to subscribe, like, and comment. I need you to hit that notification bell so you can know when we're coming back to you again live. This was fun. I enjoyed being with you here. Thank you, Rachel, for coming in. Thank you for all the other folks who came in, stopped by for a little bit and chimed your way out of here. We're doing this thing for you. We invite everybody to be part of this. Our hashtag is simple: ban and break your algorithm. Get out of what you know. Get into what you need to know. Stay curious. And remember, think. It ain't illegal yet.